Hi, it's Nicci Tina of Kick Butts Take Names. I'm the ambassador of butt kicking. With this week's video, and I thought I knew what I wanted to talk about this week, and then came the resignation of the director of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Brenda Fitzgerald. And it was a surprise. Well, people resign all the time, right? But it was a surprise, the conditions around her resignation. So the surprise wasn't that she had stock in the tobacco industry, at least not from my perspective, because the tobacco industry is pretty diversified now. And so you could actually own stock in the tobacco industry and not even know that you do. I mean, I might own stock in the tobacco industry and not realize it because it's just that diversified. You'd have to do a fair amount of research to know for sure that you didn't. So the idea that she could have owned stock in the tobacco industry previous to taking her position didn't seem like a surprise at all. What seemed like a surprise, a couple of things. One, that she bought stock in 5 different tobacco companies after taking her position as the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, an organization that has a pretty major mission of addressing the impact of tobacco and working for prevention as well. It's a pretty significant part of their message and their mission. And so that came as a surprise. And the other thing that was surprising was that she didn't seem to, at least from the reports that I read and heard, she didn't think that there was any conflict of interest in that as a doctor and the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, an organization that has all access to all kinds of research and information over decades related to the impact of tobacco use on adults and kids alike. And so I called it out. I wrote a post about it, and I got some feedback, people saying, good for you calling her out. And I thought, oh, that's good. And then I started thinking about I started thinking about congruence in my own life as well. I started thinking about where in my life are things not matching up. Like, I'd like to be able to sit down with Dr. Brenda Fitzgerald and say, Brenda, what were you thinking? Like, how did this make sense to you? Because I'm sure she, in her mind and her thinking, it makes sense somehow. So I'd be curious to know what her thoughts are on that. And then I also thought, like, where are things not matching up for me? Like, I used tobacco for decades, for over 2 decades, to be exact. And I also said that I cared about my appearance. I cared about looking good. Now, I have to say, I didn't think that I was going to live this long. I used to always think that I would be gone by the age of 30, and now I'm twice that. And so, I mean, if I had really thought about the impact of tobacco use on my physical appearance, for instance, because that was a much bigger incentive in my 20s, if I had really thought about, how is that going to affect my skin, specifically my neck, how is that going to affect my overall well-being, my health. Like, while I was still using tobacco, I had started eating more vegetables and kind of leaning more into a vegetarian diet. So I'd eat this great meal, big salad or something, or some nice roasted vegetables, and then I'd follow it up with a couple of butts. I mean, it just makes no sense at all. Like, that's just one example of the incongruence, right? It's one of those places where, you think, that doesn't really make sense. Doesn't really make sense, you know? So I just look at this and I think it would be really easy for me to look at Brenda as I am and thinking, I don't get it. I don't understand. Like, how do these things go together in your mind and your thinking? I mean, from my perspective, her going out and buying stock in 5 different tobacco companies after taking her position as the director of the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention would be like me going out and buying stock in 5 different tobacco companies when I'm helping people stop smoking. Doesn't really seem like they go together. So while I'm questioning her choices and her actions, I'm also taking a look at my own. I'm also taking a look at places in my life where things don't match up, where things aren't congruent. And I thought, is that something that we can do from this? Like when we see something like this in the news, can we just let it be a golden opportunity for us to take a look at incongruence and congruence in our own life? Are things matching up? So, Brenda, thank you for drawing my attention to this and giving me this wonderful opportunity to just take a moment and, I don't know, for all of us to take a moment and check ourselves as we, so readily point the finger at you and go, what were you thinking? To also do that with ourselves. So, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the chance to take a closer look. And thank you for watching. And next week, we'll get back to talking about questions and tips and the butt kicker pack. But this, just 2 days after the announcement of her resignation, it seemed like it was important enough to go ahead and spend some time talking about it. All right. Thanks so much. Take care. Have a great week.